Jack Mercer's hands were shaking as he pressed his fingers against the woman's throat, searching for a pulse he wasn't sure he'd find. Snow buried them both, the blizzard screaming like something alive and hungry. His daughter Emma was screaming too, somewhere behind him, but all Jack could hear was the silence between the woman's shallow breaths. 3 years ago, he'd held his wife this same way, felt her life slip away while he stood helpless. He'd sworn never again. But the land didn't care about promises. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button and stay with me until the end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels. Now let's get back to Jack and the woman who's about to change everything. The fence post splintered under Jack's hammer just as Emma's voice cut through the wind. "Papa! Papa! Someone's out there!" Jack's head snapped up. His daughter stood 20 yards away, pointing toward the north pasture. The sky had turned the color of old bruises, and snow was already falling sideways. "Emma, get Danny inside." "But Papa!" "Now!" Emma grabbed her younger brother's hand and ran. Jack dropped the hammer and moved. The wind hit him like a fist, stealing his breath. His boots sank deep with every step. The dark shape in the snow didn't move. Jack's heart hammered against his ribs. He'd seen death before, knew its stillness. But as he got closer, he saw the woman's fingers twitching, clawing at nothing. She was alive. Barely. Jack dropped to his knees beside her. Her riding coat was expensive. He could tell that much, the kind of wool you didn't find in Silver Creek. Her hat was gone. Dark hair spread across the snow like spilled ink. Her face was white as death lips blue. He pressed 2 fingers to her throat. Pulse. Faint, but there. "Thank God," he muttered. Jack slid his arms under her and lifted. She weighed nothing, like she hadn't eaten in days. Her head lolled against his chest. The wind howled. Snow stung his eyes, blinded him. He couldn't see the cabin, could barely see his own feet. But he knew this land, every rock and rise of it. He walked by memory and desperation. His arms burned. His lungs screamed. The woman's breath came in tiny gasps against his neck. "Stay with me," Jack said. "Stay with me now." The cabin door appeared through the white. Jack kicked it open. Warmth hit him like a wave. "Papa?" Danny's voice was high, scared. "Is she dead?" Emma stood by the fire, her face pale. "Not yet." Jack laid the woman on the floor near the hearth. "Emma, get every blanket we got. Danny, build up that fire." The children moved fast. They'd learned not to hesitate when Papa used that voice. Jack worked quickly. The woman's coat was soaked through, heavy with melted snow. He removed it, his movements careful, modest. Her dress beneath was wet, too, clinging to her skin. She was shaking now, violent tremors that rattled her teeth. "Papa, will she die like Mama?" Danny whispered. Jack's hands stilled for just a moment. Then he kept working. "No, not if I can help it." Emma brought the quilts. Jack wrapped the woman tight, tucking them around her like a cocoon. Her skin was ice cold. He'd seen frostbite before, knew what it could do. He checked her hands, her feet. The fingers were pale, but not black. Not yet. Danny fed wood into the fire until flames roared up the chimney. Heat filled the cabin. Jack sat back on his heels and looked at the woman's face. She was young, maybe late 20s. Her hands were soft when he'd checked them, no calluses. Not a ranch woman. Not from around here. "Who is she?" Emma asked. "Don't know, honey." "Why was she out in the storm?" "Don't know that either." Outside, the wind shrieked. Snow piled against the windows, climbing higher. They were snowed in now. No way to town, no way to get the doctor. Just Jack and whatever skills he'd learned from too many years watching things die. "Emma, heat some water. Danny, you stay close to that fire." "What are you gonna do, Papa?" "Keep her alive." Hours crawled by. The woman drifted in and out, murmuring words Jack couldn't catch. Fragments. Pieces. "Have to find him." "Can't know. They can't." "Please. Don't tell." Trouble, Jack thought. He'd lived long enough to recognize it when it came calling. Near midnight, the woman's eyes opened. They were gray, the color of storm clouds. They locked on Jack's face with an intensity that made him lean back. She tried to sit up. Jack caught her shoulder. "Easy now. You're safe." Her voice came out raw, broken. "Please, don't tell anyone I'm here." Then her eyes rolled back, and she was gone again, sinking into darkness. Jack stared at the door, then at the woman, then back at the door. Definitely trouble. But he'd never turned away someone who needed help. His wife Catherine had taught him that. Help first, ask questions later. It was the only way decent people survived out here. Jack pulled his chair close to the fire and settled in to watch. The woman's breathing was steadier now, deeper. Color was coming back to her cheeks. He looked at his children sleeping in the loft, curled together under their own quilts. Emma's arm was draped over Danny's shoulders, protecting him even in sleep. "What have I brought into this house?" Jack whispered to the empty room. The fire crackled. The wind screamed. No answers came. Morning broke clear and cold. The storm had passed, leaving the world buried under 3 feet of fresh snow. Sunlight streamed through the cabin's single window, turning everything white and blinding. Jack woke stiff in his chair, neck aching. He hadn't meant to sleep. The woman was still wrapped in quilts by the fire, but her eyes were open now. She was watching him. "You're awake," Jack said. She nodded just barely. "How you feeling?" "Cold." Her voice was still rough. "And stupid." "Well, you're alive. That's something." Emma appeared at the top of the ladder, her braid messy from sleep. "Papa, she's awake." "I can see that. Come on down, both of you. Let's get some breakfast going." The children climbed down. Danny hung back shy, but Emma came right up to the woman. "I'm Emma. That's Danny. You almost died." "Emma," Jack warned. "Well, she did." The woman's lips twitched, almost a smile. "You're right. I did." "What's your name?" Emma asked. The woman hesitated. Jack saw the lie forming before she spoke. Lori Walker. "I'm Jack Mercer. These are my kids." "Thank you." Lori's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for saving my life." Jack turned away, uncomfortable with gratitude. He moved to the stove and started pulling out supplies. Bacon beans, the last of yesterday's bread. "Where were you headed?" Jack asked, his back still turned. Another pause. "To visit family. I had a guide, but we got separated in the storm." Jack didn't believe her. The lie was smooth practiced, but it was still a lie. He'd heard enough of them to know. "Storm snowed us in," he said. "Can't get to town for at least 3 days, maybe more. You're welcome to stay till the pass clears." "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not." Jack cracked eggs into a pan. "We got food and space. That's more than some folks have." Lori sat up slowly, the quilts falling away. She was still wearing her dress, wrinkled and stained now. She looked around the cabin with careful eyes, taking it all in. One room, a loft for the children, a table and 4 chairs, a photograph on the mantel next to a woman's wedding ring. No wife. "Your wife?" Lori asked quietly. "Died 3 years back." Jack's voice was flat. "Bringing Danny into the world." "I'm sorry." "Me too." Emma brought Lori a cup of water. Lori took it with both hands, her fingers still trembling. "Thank you, sweetheart." Emma studied her with solemn eyes. "You talk fancy." "Emma," Jack said. "Well, she does." Lori smiled, a real one this time. "I went to school back east. It's hard to shake the accent." "What's school like?" Danny asked, speaking for the first time. "Lots of books. Lots of teachers telling you to sit still." "I like books," Emma said. "Miss Callahan lends me hers sometimes." "Who's Miss Callahan?" "The school teacher in town," Jack said. He slid eggs and bacon onto plates. "Come eat, you need your strength." They sat at the table together, an odd little group. Jack watched Lori pick at her food, her movements careful and slow. She was scared, he could see that. But of what? Can you ride? Jack asked. Not well. Can you shoot? No. Can you cook? Lori looked at her plate. Not really. Emma's eyes went wide. What can you do? Emma, that's rude. I'm just asking. Lori set down her fork. It's a fair question. I can read and write. I can do mathematics. I can play piano. None of which helps you much, I imagine. Can you mend? Jack asked. I've never tried. Can you clean? I'm willing to learn. Jack nodded slowly. That's all I'm asking. You pull your weight while you're here, we'll get along fine. I will, I promise. After breakfast, Jack showed Lori the cabin. It didn't take long. The main room held everything: the stove, the table, the fireplace, his bed in the corner. The loft was the children's space. Outside was the barn, the chicken coop, the well. It's not much, Jack said. It's beautiful, Lori replied, and she meant it. He could hear it in her voice. The days fell into a rhythm. Jack woke before dawn to tend the animals. The children hauled water and fed chickens. Lori tried to help, but everything she touched seemed to go wrong. The first time she tried to cook beans, she burned them black. Jack scraped them into the pig slop without comment. I'm sorry, Lori said, her face red. Don't apologize. Try again tomorrow. The second time she put in too much salt. The third time she forgot to soak them overnight. Emma finally took pity on her. Here, Emma said, pulling Lori to the stove. Watch me. You gotta soak them first like this. Then you cook them low and slow. Can't rush beans. Lori watched with fierce concentration, like Emma was teaching her to build a cathedral instead of cook dinner. Why don't you know this? Emma asked. Didn't your mama teach you? My mama died when I was young, and after that, we had help. Help? People who cooked for us. Emma's eyes went round as saucers. Like servants. Emma, Jack warned from across the room. I'm just asking. Lori smiled. Yes, like servants. We had a big house, lots of people working there. Were you rich? Danny asked, wandering over. Lori's smile faded. My family had money, yes. Where are they now? Danny, that's enough questions, Jack said. Let Miss Lori be. But Jack was watching her face. He saw the fear flash across it quick as lightning. She wasn't just running from bad weather or a bad marriage. She was running from something worse. That night, after the children were asleep, Jack and Lori sat by the fire. He whittled a piece of wood, working it into a horse for Danny. She held a shirt of his, trying to mend a tear in the sleeve. Her stitches were clumsy, uneven, but she kept trying. You don't have to do that, Jack said. You saved my life. The least I can do is fix your shirt. What? Saving lives is just what you do out here. Don't mean you owe me. Lori looked up at him. Where I come from, everything is owed. Every favor, every kindness. There's always a price. Sounds like a hard way to live. It is. They sat in silence for a while. The fire popped and crackled. Outside, a coyote howled in the distance. Can I ask you something? Lori said quietly. Go ahead. Why did you help me? You didn't know me. I could have been anyone. Jack's knife stilled. He stared at the half-formed horse in his hands. My wife, Catherine, he said slowly. She used to say that kindness was the only thing that separated us from the wolves. Said if we stopped helping folks who needed it, we might as well lay down and die ourselves. She sounds wise. She was. Jack's throat tightened. She died because I wasn't here. I was on a cattle drive 2 weeks away. By the time I got home, he stopped, swallowed hard. I couldn't save her, but I can save other folks. So I do. Lori set down the shirt. Her eyes were wet. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. Is that why you live out here, away from everyone? Partly, also because people talk. They got opinions about a man raising kids alone. Got opinions about everything, really. Jack looked at her. You'll see. When we get to town, they'll have opinions about you, too. I'm used to that. Are you? Lori didn't answer. The next morning, Danny spotted them first. Papa Riders. Jack was in the barn mucking stalls. He dropped the pitchfork and ran outside. 3 horses stood on the ridge above the ranch, dark shapes against the white snow. 3 men, well-dressed, rifles on their saddles. Jack's gut clenched. He turned and ran for the cabin. Lori was inside helping Emma with breakfast. When she saw Jack's face, all the color drained from hers. "No," she whispered. "No, they found me." "Who are they?" "My brother's men." Jack moved to the window. The riders were coming down the ridge now, taking their time. They knew there was nowhere to run. "Emma, Danny, get in the loft. Now." "But, Papa—" "Now." The children scrambled up the ladder. Jack pulled his rifle from above the door and checked the load. 6 shots. 3 men. "Jack, you can't," Lori said. "You don't understand what they're capable of." "Don't matter. This is my land, my home. Nobody comes here making threats. They're not here to threaten. They're here to take me. Over my dead body." Lori grabbed his arm. Her fingers dug in hard. "That's exactly what I'm afraid of." The riders stopped at the fence line 20 yards from the cabin. Close enough to talk, far enough to run if shooting started. Jack stepped outside, rifle in hand, but pointed at the ground. Not threatening, not yet. The lead rider was older, maybe 50, with gray at his temples and cold eyes. He smiled, but it was the smile of a snake. "Good morning," the man called. "Fine day after that storm." "What do you want?" Jack asked. "We're looking for someone, a young woman, dark hair about this tall." He held up his hand. "Wearing a fine coat. Her family's worried sick about her." "Haven't seen anyone like that." The man's smile widened. "Now, Mr. Mercer, Jack Mercer. Mr. Mercer, we tracked her here, through the snow. Her footprints led right to your property before the storm hit." He leaned forward in his saddle. "So, let's try this again. Where is Miss Lorelei Beaumont?" Jack's face didn't change, but his mind raced. Lorelei, not Lori Walker. Beaumont. The railroad Beaumonts. The richest family in 3 territories. Sweet Jesus. "Don't know any Beaumont," Jack said. "Perhaps you know her by another name. Perhaps she lied to you. Perhaps you should move along." The man sighed like Jack was a misbehaving child. "Mr. Mercer, Miss Beaumont is not well. She's been under considerable strain. Her brother, Mr. Sterling Beaumont, has her best interests at heart. He simply wants her returned home safely." The cabin door opened. Lori stepped out. "No." Jack turned. "Get back inside." "No." Lori walked forward, her chin lifted. She was scared Jack could see that, but she wasn't backing down. "I'm not going with you." The lead rider touched his hat. "Miss Beaumont, your brother is very concerned. He's asked us to escort you home." "I don't want to go home." "Ma'am, with respect, you're not thinking clearly. Your brother has consulted with doctors. They agree you need rest. Proper care." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly. I'm 27 years old. I'm staying here of my own free will." "Miss Beaumont, your brother controls your inheritance under your father's will. Until you return and prove you're capable of managing your affairs, you remain under his guardianship." Jack saw Lori flinch like she'd been struck. "That's not legal," she said, but her voice wavered. "It's very legal, ma'am, and if you don't come voluntarily, we'll return with the sheriff and proper paperwork." Jack stepped forward, putting himself between Lori and the riders. The lady said no. "Time for you gentlemen to move along." The lead rider's eyes narrowed. He studied Jack, taking in the worn coat, the calloused hands, the small ranch. Mr. Mercer, you're interfering in family business. That's a dangerous thing to do. This is my land. My business is who I protect here. We'll be back with the law. And when we return, you'll face charges for harboring someone against her family's wishes. You could lose everything. This ranch. Your children. Jack's hands tightened on the rifle. Get off my property. The three men stared at him for a long moment. Then the leader touched his hat again. We'll see you soon, Mr. Mercer, Miss Beaumont. They turned their horses and rode back up the ridge. Jack watched until they disappeared into the tree line. When he finally lowered the rifle, his hands were shaking. Lori was crying silent tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I've destroyed your life. Jack turned to her. Not yet, you haven't. But I need the truth now, all of it. They sat at the table, Emma and Danny still hiding in the loft. Lori's hands trembled around her coffee cup. My name is Lorelei Margaret Beaumont, she said. My father was Jonathan Beaumont. He built the railroad through this territory. When my parents died 5 years ago, they left everything to both me and my brother Sterling. The Beaumont Railroad. Jack let out a long breath. You're that Beaumont? Yes. Why did you run? Lori stared into her cup. Sterling wants it all. The money, the company, everything. He's been trying to have me declared incompetent so he can control my shares. He hired doctors to say I was unstable, started telling people I was having episodes. He was going to lock me away. Lock you away where? A sanitarium. He called it a rest cure, but I heard him talking to the doctors. They were going to keep me medicated, kept quiet, until I signed everything over to him. Jack's jaw clenched. That's not legal. It is if the doctors say I'm insane, and Sterling has enough money to make doctors say whatever he wants. So you ran. 2 weeks ago, a maid helped me. She left a window unlocked and a horse saddled. I rode until the blizzard caught me. Lori looked up at him, her eyes red. You saved my life, Jack. But now Sterling knows where I am, and he won't stop. He'll come back with the sheriff, with lawyers, with doctors. He'll take me, and he'll destroy you for helping me. Emma's voice came from the loft. Papa, come on down. The children climbed down holding hands. They looked scared. Jack knelt in front of them. Sometimes doing the right thing means standing against folks more powerful than us. You understand? Emma nodded. We protect our own. That's right. And Miss Lori needs protecting. So we fight? Danny asked. So we fight? Jack stood and looked at Lori. You're not going anywhere unless you want to. And if they come back, they'll have to go through me. You don't know what Sterling is capable of. Maybe not, but I know what I'm capable of when someone needs protecting. Lori stood cross to him and threw her arms around his neck. Jack froze, startled. But then he felt her sobbing against his shoulder, and his arms came up to hold her. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. Emma and Danny watched their eyes wide. Outside the sun was shining, the snow was melting, spring was coming. But so was trouble, and Jack Mercer had just declared war on the most powerful family in the territory. That first night after the men left, Jack couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch steps with his rifle across his knees watching the tree line. The moon was bright, turning the snow silver. Every shadow looked like a rider. Every sound made his finger twitch toward the trigger. The door creaked behind him. You should be resting, Jack said without turning. Lori sat down beside him, wrapping a quilt around her shoulders. So should you. Can't. Because of me. Because of them. Jack looked at her. How much money are we talking about, your share of the railroad? Lori was quiet for a moment. $3 million. Maybe more. Jack's breath left him in a rush. $3 million. He couldn't even picture that much money. His whole ranch wasn't worth $5,000. Sweet Jesus. Now you understand why Sterling won't stop. I understand why he wants it. Doesn't mean he gets to have it. Jack, you have children, a life. You can't throw that away for a stranger. You ain't a stranger anymore. Jack stood stretching his stiff back. Get some sleep, Lori. Tomorrow we start figuring this out. How? Don't know yet, but we will. Morning came cold and clear. Jack was already in the barn when Emma found him. Papa, she's trying to milk Bessie. Jack walked to the barn door. Lori sat on the milking stool, her forehead pressed against the cow's flank. Her hands gripped the teats, but nothing was happening. You got to pull and squeeze at the same time, Jack said. Lori jumped, nearly falling off the stool. I'm trying. Try harder. Bessie won't wait all day. Jack demonstrated his rough hands making quick work of it. Milk streamed into the bucket with a steady rhythm. See, pull, squeeze. Pull, squeeze. Lori tried again. A thin stream dribbled out. There you go. Keep at it. My hands hurt. They'll toughen up. Emma appeared with Danny trailing behind her. Papa, can we go to town today? Not today. Why not? Because I said so. Emma crossed her arms. You always let us go to town on Saturdays. This ain't a normal Saturday. Because of her. Emma glanced at Lori. Because of the situation. What situation? Jack sighed. His daughter was too smart for her own good. The situation where men might be watching the roads, where it ain't safe. Are we in trouble, Papa? Not the kind you're thinking, but we need to be careful for a while. Danny tugged on Jack's sleeve. Are the bad men coming back? Jack knelt down, putting himself at eye level with his son. Maybe, but if they do, Papa will handle it. Promise. Promise. But promises were getting harder to keep. 3 days passed. No riders came. No sheriff appeared. Jack started to hope maybe Sterling had given up, moved on to easier prey. Then Ben Tucker rode up. Jack was splitting wood when he heard the horse. He grabbed his rifle before he recognized Ben's gray mare. Easy, Jack. It's just me. Ben climbed down, his weathered face serious. He'd been Jack's best friend for 15 years, since before Catherine, before the kids. They'd built this ranch together, fought off wolves and drought and despair. You look like hell, Ben said. Feel worse. What brings you out? Needed to see if the rumors were true. Jack's hands tightened on the rifle. What rumors? That you got a woman living here, that she's running from the law, that you're harboring a fugitive. She ain't a fugitive. Her brother says different. Her brother's a liar. Ben studied him. You sure about that? I'm sure she showed up half dead in a blizzard. I'm sure she's scared of going back. That's all I need to be sure about. Jack, this woman's a Beaumont. Do you understand what that means? I understand she's a person who needs help. Her brother's been to see the sheriff, to see the territorial judge. He's got lawyers, Jack, doctors. He's building a case. Let him build. You can't win this fight. Jack set down the rifle and picked up the axe. He swung it hard, splitting a log clean through. Maybe not, but I can fight it. At what cost your ranch, your kids? Don't you think I've thought about that? Jack's voice rose. Don't you think I lay awake every night wondering if I'm being a fool? Then why do it? Jack planted the axe in the stump and turned. Because Catherine would have. Because it's the right thing. And because if I turn my back on someone who needs help, what kind of man am I teaching my kids to be? Ben was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. All right. What do you need? A lawyer. A good one. There's Margaret Chen in Cheyenne. She's handled conservatorship cases before. Can she win? Against a Beaumont, I don't know, but she'll fight like hell. That's all I'm asking. Ben mounted his horse. Jack, one more thing. The town's talking. You might want to prepare yourself for that. Let them talk. But talk turned to something worse. Sunday morning, Jack decided they needed supplies. The cabin was running low on flour and coffee. He figured if he went early before church let out, he could avoid most folks. He was wrong. The general store was crowded when they walked in. Conversations died. Heads turned. Women pulled their children closer. "Papa," Emma whispered. "Why's everyone staring? Don't pay them any mind." Jack walked to the counter. Old man Henderson stood there, his face carefully neutral. "Jack, what can I do for you? Need flour, coffee, sugar if you got it." Henderson started pulling items from the shelves, moving slower than usual. The store stayed quiet. Too quiet. Then Martha Peterson spoke up, her voice carrying across the room. "Shame, that's what it is. A man living in sin right in front of his children." Jack's jaw clenched. He didn't turn around. "Martha, that's enough," someone said. "It's not enough. Those poor children growing up with that kind of example. Someone should notify the authorities." "The woman's a guest," Jack said quietly, still facing the counter. "Nothing more." "That's not what I heard. I heard she's living there, sleeping under your roof, unmarried." Jack turned slowly. Martha stood with 3 other churchwomen, their faces hard with judgment. "What I do on my land is my business. Not when it affects the moral character of this town." "The moral character of this town hung my wife's memory up like a trophy and then forgot about her kids," Jack said. His voice was low, dangerous. "So forgive me if I don't give a damn what you think." "Jack," Henderson warned. But Jack was done. He paid for his supplies, grabbed Emma and Danny's hands, and walked out. They were halfway to the wagon when Emma started crying. "Hey now," Jack said, stopping. He knelt in the mud. "What's this about?" "Sarah Thompson's mama wouldn't let her talk to me. She pulled her away." "I know, honey." "Why do they hate us?" "They don't hate us. They're just scared of what they don't understand." "I don't understand either," Emma said. "Why is Miss Laurie here? Why can't she go home?" Jack looked at his daughter's tear-stained face and made a decision. She was old enough for the truth. Because sometimes home ain't safe. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you are the ones who hurt you most. Like her brother. Like her brother. So we're protecting her. Like you protected that fox from the dogs last winter. Jack smiled despite everything. "Yeah, something like that." "Okay." Emma wiped her nose. "Then I don't care what they say." Danny nodded fiercely. "Me neither. That's my kids." They drove home in silence, but when they crested the ridge and saw the cabin smoke rising from the chimney, Laurie waiting on the porch, something in Jack's chest loosened. This was right. He knew it in his bones. Laurie met them at the wagon. "How was town?" "Fine." Jack lied. Liar. Laurie had seen Emma's red eyes. "What happened?" "Nothing we can't handle." That night, after the children were asleep, Laurie confronted him. "Tell me the truth." Jack told her. All of it. The stares, the whispers, Martha Peterson's accusations. Laurie's face went white. "I have to leave." "No." "Jack, I'm destroying your life, your children's lives." "You ain't destroying nothing. Those people are just showing who they really are." "They're right, though. I am living here, unmarried. I am—" "You're surviving," Jack interrupted. "That's all. And anyone who's got a problem with that can answer to me. You can't fight the whole town. Watch me." Laurie stood pacing. "You don't understand. Sterling will use this. He'll paint you as some kind of predator taking advantage of a vulnerable woman. He'll say, 'You're after my money.' I don't want your damn money." "I know that, but they won't believe it." Jack caught her arm, stopping her pacing. "What do you want to do?" "I want to disappear, find some place Sterling can never find me, and spend the rest of your life running. If it means you and your children are safe, yes." Jack looked at her. Really looked at her. Her dark hair was coming loose from its pins. Her dress was one of Emma's old ones taken in to fit. She'd been here less than 2 weeks, but she'd changed. Her hands had calluses now. Her skin had color from working outside. She looked stronger. She looked like she belonged. "I got a better idea," Jack said. "What? We fight. We go to Cheyenne, talk to that lawyer Ben mentioned. We build a case. We prove Sterling's the one who's incompetent, not you. That's impossible. Maybe, but at least we'd be doing something instead of just waiting for him to make his move. Lori pulled away, hugging herself. And if we lose, then we lose. But at least we tried. You could lose everything, Jack. I already lost everything once. I survived. I'll survive again if I have to. Why? Lori turned to face him, tears in her eyes. Why are you doing this? Jack was quiet for a long moment. The fire crackled. Outside, an owl hooted. Because for 3 years I've been dead inside, he finally said. Just going through the motions. Working, raising the kids, but not really living. Then you showed up and something woke up. Something I thought I'd buried with Catherine. Jack? I ain't saying I got feelings for you. I ain't ready for that, don't know if I'll ever be. But you remind me, there's more to life than just surviving. You remind me what it means to fight for something. Lori crossed to him. She took his scarred, work-worn hands in hers. I think I'm falling in love with you, she whispered. Jack's breath caught. Lori, I know you're not ready. I know it's too soon. But I need you to know in case Sterling takes me. In case I don't get another chance to say it. Jack pulled his hands away gently. Don't talk like that. It's true, though. Maybe. But we ain't giving up yet. The next morning, Jack rode to Ben's ranch and borrowed his wagon. He came back and started loading supplies. Where are we going? Emma asked. Cheyenne. All of us. Why? Because we're going to see a lawyer. And because I ain't leaving you kids here where I can't protect you. They left within the hour. The road to Cheyenne was rough, still muddy from melted snow. The wagon lurched and swayed. Lori sat in the back with the children, telling them stories about trains and cities and things they'd never seen. Jack drove in silence, his rifle beside him on the seat. They were halfway there when the riders appeared. 6 of them this time, not 3. They came from the trees on both sides of the road surrounding the wagon. Jack pulled the horses to a stop. Stay in the wagon, he told Emma. No matter what happens. Papa. Do as I say. Jack climbed down, rifle in hand. The lead rider was the same man from before, but now he had reinforcements. And a badge. Mr. Mercer, the man said. I'm Deputy Frank Morrison. I have a warrant for Miss Beaumont's return to her family's custody. On what grounds? Mental incompetence. Signed by Judge Harrison himself. That's a lie, Lori said from the wagon. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us peacefully. Jack raised his rifle, not pointing it at anyone, just holding it ready. She ain't going nowhere. Morrison sighed. Mr. Mercer, don't make this harder than it needs to be. We're the law. The law should protect people, not hand them over to their abusers. That's a serious accusation. You got proof. Do you? You got proof she's incompetent? I got a judge's signature. A judge Sterling Beaumont paid for. Morrison's jaw tightened. You're interfering with the law. That's a crime. And taking someone against their will is kidnapping. That's a bigger crime. The 6 men shifted in their saddles. Hands moved toward guns. Jack! Ben's voice called out. Don't do this. Jack turned. Ben rode up from behind his own rifle drawn, but he wasn't aiming at Morrison's men. He was aiming at the trees. What are you doing, Ben? Making sure it's a fair fight. Ben whistled. 3 more riders emerged from the forest. Ranchers Jack knew, men he'd helped over the years. They formed up behind the wagon, guns ready. Morrison looked around, calculating odds. 6 against 5. But Jack's men had the high ground. This ain't over, Morrison said. It is for today, Ben replied. The deputy stared at Jack for a long moment. You're making powerful enemies. Wouldn't be the first time. Morrison wheeled his horse and rode off, his men following. Jack lowered his rifle, his hands shaking. Thank you, he said to Ben. Don't thank me yet. We just declared war on Sterling Beaumont. Things are going to get worse before they get better. They made it to Cheyenne by nightfall. Margaret Chen's office was above a dry goods store, up a narrow flight of stairs. She was younger than Jack expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and ink-stained fingers. Mr. Mercer, Mr. Tucker, and you must be Miss Beaumont. How did you know we were coming? Jack asked. Word travels fast when you make enemies of powerful men. The whole territory's talking about you. Margaret gestured to chairs. Sit. Tell me everything. They talked for 2 hours. Laurie explained about Sterling's control, the doctors, the planned institutionalization. Jack described the confrontation with Morrison. Margaret took notes, asking sharp questions. Finally, she sat back. Can you win? Jack asked. Honestly, I don't know. Sterling has money connections influence, but he's also made mistakes. Hiring armed men to pursue his sister looks bad. Bribing a judge if we can prove it looks worse. Can we prove it? Maybe. Judge Harrison's been suspected of corruption before. Nothing stuck, but there's smoke there. Margaret looked at Laurie. The real question is, can you prove you're competent? How? Testimony. Your own first. Then others who can vouch for your character, your judgment. Business associates, friends. Sterling's isolated me from everyone. Not everyone. You're here, aren't you? With people who believe in you. Margaret looked at Jack. Your testimony will matter. You've seen her make decisions, work, contribute. That's evidence. When's the hearing? Jack asked. 2 weeks. Sterling's lawyers filed for an emergency conservatorship. Judge Harrison will hear it in his chambers. Can we request a different judge? Already did. Harrison refused. Said he's known the family for years, thinks he's the best person to decide. That's corrupt. Probably. But we'll have to work with it. Margaret looked at each of them. I need you to understand something. This won't be easy. They'll attack your character, Mr. Mercer. They'll call you a fortune hunter, a manipulator. They'll drag your family through the mud. Let them try. And you, Miss Beaumont. They'll bring doctors who'll testify you're unstable, irrational, a danger to yourself. Can you handle that? Laurie's voice was steady. I've been handling Sterling's abuse for 5 years. I can handle a courtroom. Margaret smiled. Good. Then let's get to work. They stayed in Cheyenne for 3 days preparing. Margaret drilled Laurie on questions she might face. She coached Jack on how to testify. She sent telegrams to business associates of Jonathan Beaumont, looking for anyone willing to speak against Sterling. Most refused. The Beaumont name carried too much weight, but a few agreed. An accountant who'd noticed irregularities in Sterling's books. A railroad worker who'd been fired for questioning Sterling's decisions. Small voices, but voices nonetheless. On the 3rd night, Jack found Laurie standing outside the hotel, looking up at the stars. Can't sleep, he asked. Too nervous. 2 weeks from now, my whole life gets decided. Not decided, we're going to fight. And if we lose, Jack was quiet. Then he said, if we lose, we'll figure something else out. But we ain't losing. You can't know that. No, but I can believe it. Laurie turned to him. In the lamplight from the hotel windows, she looked beautiful and scared and determined all at once. Jack, if this goes bad, if Sterling takes me, promise me you'll look after yourself. After Emma and Danny. Don't throw your life away trying to rescue me. Can't promise that. Jack? I said I'd protect you. That don't come with conditions. He took her hand, squeezed it once. We're in this together now. All the way. Laurie's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. All the way. They returned to the ranch the next morning. As they crested the ridge, Jack saw something that made his blood run cold. The cabin door hung open. Stay here, he told Ben. Jack jumped down from the wagon and ran. Inside furniture was overturned. Catherine's picture lay shattered on the floor. Emma's books were torn, pages scattered. But no one was there. On the table, held down by a rock, was a note. 2 weeks Mercer, then she's ours. If you're smart, you'll hand her over now and save yourself the trouble. If you're not, we'll destroy everything you love. Your choice. It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. Jack crumpled the note in his fist. Behind him, Lori gasped at the destruction. "He's trying to scare us," she whispered. "It's working," Jack admitted. Emma and Danny appeared in the doorway, their faces shocked at the mess. "Who did this?" Emma asked. "Bad men," Jack said. "But they're gone now." "Are they coming back?" Jack looked at his daughter, at Danny, at Lori, at the home he'd built with his own hands now violated by Sterling's hired thugs. He thought about backing down, giving up, sending Lori away to save his family. Then he thought about Catherine, about what she would do. "Yeah," Jack said. "They'll come back, but when they do, we'll be ready." He started picking up the pieces, putting his home back together, and he started planning for war. They spent that whole night putting the cabin back together. Jack nailed Catherine's picture frame, replacing the broken glass with a piece from an old window. Emma gathered her torn books, smoothing pages with careful fingers. Danny swept up shattered dishes, his small face set with determination that made him look older than 7. Lori worked beside them without speaking. She scrubbed the floors where muddy boots had tracked through. She folded scattered blankets. She moved like someone trying to erase evidence of violence through sheer will. Near midnight, Ben finally headed home, promising to check on them daily. Jack walked him to his horse. "You need more than me, Jack. You need the law on your side." "The law's bought and paid for." "Not all of it. Sheriff Wade ain't perfect, but he ain't corrupt either. Talk to him. He'll just side with Sterling. Maybe, but at least you'll know where he stands." Ben mounted up. 2 weeks ain't much time. Use it smart." After he left, Jack stood in the yard staring at the dark tree line. Somewhere out there, Sterling's men were watching, waiting. He felt Lori come up beside him. "You should send me away," she said quietly. "Tonight. I could take a horse disappear before they come back." "Where would you go?" "I don't know. California, maybe? Somewhere Sterling can't reach." "He'd reach. Men like him always do." Jack turned to face her. "Besides, running ain't living. Neither is dying for someone you barely know." "I know you well enough." Lori's voice broke. "You know I can't cook, that I'm useless with animals, that I've brought nothing but trouble since the moment you found me. I know you work harder than anyone I've seen, that you ain't afraid to bleed for something, that my kids smile more since you got here than they have in 3 years. Jack's throat tightened. "I know you're brave, Lori, braver than you think." "I'm terrified." "So am I, but we're doing it anyway." Inside, Emma called for him. One of the table legs had split when it was knocked over. Jack went to fix it, grateful for something concrete to do with his hands. The next morning, Jack rode into Silver Creek alone. He found Sheriff Thomas Wade in his office, feet up on his desk, reading a newspaper. "Jack, figured you'd show up eventually. Need to report a crime. Men broke into my cabin, destroyed property, left a threatening note." Wade didn't move. "You got proof who did it?" "I got the note." "Let me see it." Jack handed it over. Wade read it slowly, his face giving nothing away. "Don't see any names here." "You know who sent it?" "I know what you think. That ain't the same as evidence. So you're not going to do anything." Wade finally lowered his feet and leaned forward. "Jack, I known you 10 years. You're a good man, but you're in over your head here." "That ain't an answer." "The answer is Sterling Beaumont has lawyers and judges and money I can't touch. If I go after his men without solid proof, I'll lose my job. Then who's going to keep this town safe?" "So you're choosing your job over what's right." Wade's jaw tightened. "I'm choosing to play smart. And you should too. That woman's trouble, Jack. Send her home before someone gets killed. She is home. She's using you. Can't you see that rich girl runs away, finds herself a cowboy who'll protect her, plays on his sympathies? Jack stood slowly. You calling me a fool? I'm calling you blinded by a pretty face and a sob story. Jack's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, he wanted to hit Wade, wanted to feel bone crack under his knuckles. But he forced himself to breathe, to step back. When they come for her, and I have to defend my home, whose side will you be on? Wade looked away. The law's side. That's what I thought. Jack walked out. Behind him, he heard Wade call his name, but he didn't turn around. At the general store, the same cold silence greeted him. Henderson took his money without meeting his eyes. Martha Peterson and her friends whispered in the corner, loud enough for Jack to hear every poisonous word. Brazen. Those poor children. Someone should do something. Jack grabbed his supplies and left. But at the door, he turned back. You want to help my children? Then stop treating them like lepers when they done nothing wrong. Martha's face flushed red. We're protecting our own children from bad influences. My kids are good kids, better than most. And if you can't see that the problem ain't with them, it's with you. He walked out before she could respond. But his hands were shaking so bad he almost dropped the flour. Back at the ranch, he found Miss Ruth Callahan sitting at his kitchen table with Lori. The school teacher was maybe 45, gray-haired and straight-backed. She'd taught Emma to read when Jack couldn't afford books. Mr. Mercer. Ruth stood. I hope you don't mind me dropping by. You're always welcome, Miss Ruth. I heard about what happened in town, about what Martha said to Emma yesterday. Ruth's eyes flashed with anger Jack had never seen in her before. I came to tell you that woman doesn't speak for all of us. Appreciate that. And to offer my testimony, at the hearing, if you'll have it. Jack sat down heavily. You understand what that means. The town will turn on you too. Let them. I've been teaching for 23 years. I know a good person when I see one, and Miss Beaumont is good people. Lori wiped her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have to win. Ruth pulled out a worn notebook. I've been writing down everything I've observed. How Emma and Danny talk about Miss Beaumont. How they've flourished with her here. The improvements in their schoolwork. Their happiness. She looked at Jack. Children don't lie about what matters, and those two love her. Jack felt something crack open in his chest. They do. Then we fight for her. All of us. After Ruth left, Emma came down from the loft where she'd been listening. Papa, are people really going to try to take Miss Lori away? Jack pulled his daughter onto his lap, even though she was getting too big for it. They're going to try. But we won't let them. We'll do everything we can to stop them. What if it's not enough? Jack looked at Lori across the table. She was watching him with those gray eyes waiting for his answer. Then we'll have tried our best. Sometimes that's all we can do. That's not good enough, Emma said fiercely. Miss Lori belongs here, with us. Anyone can see that. Not everyone sees the same way, honey. Emma slid off his lap and walked to Lori. She took the older woman's hand. You're not going anywhere. I won't let you. Lori pulled Emma into a hug, her face buried in the girl's hair. Jack watched them and felt his heart break and heal at the same time. That night, Lori taught Emma to braid her hair in a new pattern. She helped Danny with his letters. She made dinner that was actually edible beans that weren't burnt and bread that was only a little lopsided. Jack watched from his chair by the fire and tried to imagine the cabin without her. He couldn't. She'd become part of the fabric of this place in just 3 weeks, like she'd always been here. Papa? Danny said, climbing onto his lap. If Miss Lori leaves, will she come back? I don't know, son. But you'll try to make her stay. Yeah, I'll try. Good, because she reads better than you, no offense. Jack laughed despite everything. None taken. After the children were asleep, Jack and Lori sat by the dying fire. She was mending one of his shirts again, her stitches getting neater with practice. "Jack, can I ask you something? What was Catherine like?" Jack was quiet for so long. Lori looked up, worried she'd overstepped. But then he started talking. "She was tough. Tougher than me in a lot of ways. Grew up on a ranch in Montana and knew how to shoot and ride before she could write her own name." Jack smiled at the memory. "First time I met her, she was breaking a horse nobody else could handle. Wildest mare I'd ever seen. Catherine just talked to her real soft, real patient, until that horse calmed down and let her ride. She sounds wonderful." She was. And stubborn as hell. When the doctor said she shouldn't have more kids after Emma, that it was too dangerous, she told him to mind his own business. Jack's voice cracked. "Told me she wanted a house full of children, that it was worth the risk." "Oh, Jack." "I should have put my foot down, should have refused, but I was weak. I wanted what she wanted, and I told myself it would be fine." He stared at his hands. "When I got home and found her gone, Emma holding Danny and crying, I knew. I knew it was my fault. It wasn't. Felt like it. Still does sometimes." Lori set down her mending and moved to sit beside him. "Catherine took a risk, because she wanted to. That was her choice, not yours. Don't make it hurt less." "No, but it means you get to forgive yourself eventually." Jack looked at her. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." "My mother died when I was 12. Typhoid fever. I was with her when it happened, holding her hand. For years I thought if I'd just done something different, called the doctor sooner, prayed harder, she might have lived. But you know now that ain't true. Logically, yes, but the guilt doesn't care about logic." They sat in silence, two people carrying the weight of the dead. Finally, Jack spoke. "You asked me once why I was helping you. I think maybe it's because you understand. About loss. About guilt. You don't try to fix it or tell me to move on. You just sit with it. Because I know it can't be fixed. Only lived with." "Yeah." Lori rested her head on his shoulder. Jack stiffened for just a moment, then relaxed. It felt right, natural, like they'd done this 100 times before. "I'm still in love with her," Jack said quietly. "Don't know if that'll ever change. I know. And I'm not asking you to stop. I'm just asking you to make room for something new alongside it. I don't know if I can. Then we'll figure it out together, or we won't. But either way, I'm grateful for right now." Jack turned his head and kissed her hair, brief and chaste. "Me too." The week before the hearing, Margaret Chen arrived at the ranch with news. "I found something. An accountant who worked for your father, Lori. He kept copies of financial records. Records that show Sterling's been embezzling for 2 years. Lori's hands flew to her mouth. "How much?" "Nearly $500,000. Funneled into personal accounts, fake suppliers, shell companies." Margaret's eyes gleamed. "This is what we needed. Proof that Sterling's the one who's incompetent, not you. Will the judge accept it?" "If we can get the accountant to testify. His name is Henry Morrison. He's in Denver now, scared to death. Says Sterling threatened his family." Jack stood. "I'll go get him." "Jack, it's 3 days' ride." "Then I better leave now." He looked at Lori. "I'll bring him back, I promise." "What if Sterling's men are watching the roads?" "Let them watch. I ain't hiding anymore." Ben agreed to stay at the ranch while Jack was gone. Ruth Callahan came too, bringing food and books for the children. Together they formed a wall of protection around Lori. Jack rode out at dawn with his rifle and 2 days' worth of supplies. The land was greening up now, winter finally giving way to spring. He pushed his horse hard, sleeping rough at night, eating jerky and hardtack. He reached Denver on the 3rd day and found Henry Morrison living in a boarding house under a fake name. The man was small, nervous, with ink-stained fingers and terrified eyes. "I can't testify. You don't understand what Sterling will do." I understand. But if you don't, he wins. He keeps Lori locked up. He keeps stealing money. He keeps hurting people. Better him than me. Jack grabbed the man's collar. You got kids. 2 daughters. Then you understand. I got 2 kids who are watching me right now, learning what it means to be brave. To stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Jack released him. You want your daughters to learn that lesson? Or you want them to learn it's okay to let bad men win because you're scared? Morrison's hands shook. If I testify, Sterling will destroy me. If you don't, you'll destroy yourself. Every time you look in the mirror, you'll see a coward. That's not fair. No, but it's true. Morrison was silent for a long time. Then he nodded once, sharp and quick. All right, I'll do it. God help me, I'll do it. They rode back together, Morrison jumping at every shadow. Jack kept his rifle ready, his eyes on the tree line. But no one stopped them. Maybe Sterling didn't know about Morrison yet. Or maybe he thought Jack wouldn't make it back in time. Either way, Jack wasn't complaining. They arrived at the ranch the night before the hearing. Lori ran out to meet them, throwing herself into Jack's arms. You came back. Said I would. I know, but I was scared. I thought maybe Sterling's men... They didn't. We're here. We got our witness. Morrison climbed down from his horse, looking like he might be sick. Ruth came out with coffee and bread. Ben slapped Jack on the back. Hell of a ride. Hell of a week. That night they went over the plan one more time. Margaret would call Lori first, then Jack, then Ruth, then Morrison. They'd build a case piece by piece showing Lori's competence, Sterling's corruption, the community support she had. It might not be enough, Margaret warned. Harrison's deep in Sterling's pocket. He could rule against us no matter what we present. Then we appeal, Lori said. That takes months, years maybe, and Sterling will have you locked away the whole time. Jack looked at Lori. Her face was pale but determined. We fight anyway, she said, because it's right, and because I'm done running. Emma and Danny sat on the floor listening to every word. What happens if the judge says Miss Lori has to go? Emma asked. No one answered for a moment. Then Jack said, Then we figure out our next move. But we don't quit. Not ever. They stayed up late preparing. Morrison practiced his testimony, his voice getting steadier each time. Lori rehearsed answers to the questions Margaret thought Sterling's lawyers would ask. Jack cleaned his rifle and tried not to think about what might happen tomorrow. Near midnight, everyone finally went to bed except Jack and Lori. They sat on the porch steps, watching stars wheel overhead. Whatever happens tomorrow, Lori said, I want you to know something. What's that? These past few weeks have been the happiest of my life, despite everything, despite the fear and the danger and the uncertainty. Being here with you and Emma and Danny, I felt more alive than I ever did in my father's mansion. Jack took her hand. Lori. Let me finish. If Sterling takes me tomorrow, if I end up locked away somewhere, I'll hold on to these memories. They'll be what keeps me sane. You gave me that, Jack. You gave me a glimpse of what life could be. Don't talk like it's over. I'm just being realistic. Well, stop it. We're going to win. Lori laughed softly. You can't know that. No, but I believe it. And sometimes that's enough. He pulled her close, and this time when he kissed her, it wasn't brief or chaste. It was deep and desperate and full of everything he couldn't say. She kissed him back with equal intensity, her hands fisting in his shirt. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Jack, Lori whispered. I know. It's too soon. I'm not ready. But God help me, Lori. He stopped, unable to finish. I know, she said. Me too. They sat holding each other until dawn started to gray the eastern sky. Then Jack stood and pulled her to her feet. Come on. Time to get ready. We got a fight to win. Inside the cabin was stirring. Emma and Danny were already up, nervous and excited. Ben was making coffee. Ruth was helping Morrison with his tie. Margaret was organizing papers. Jack looked around at these people who'd gathered to help, who'd risked their own safety and reputations for someone most of them barely knew. This was community. This was family. Not blood, but something stronger, something chosen. "All right," Jack said. "Let's go show Sterling Beaumont what he's up against." They loaded into wagons and headed for town. The sun rose behind them, painting the mountains gold. It was going to be a beautiful day. Jack just hoped it wouldn't be their last one together. The courthouse in Cheyenne was already packed when they arrived. Jack had never seen so many people crammed into one building. Reporters lined the walls with notebooks. Townsfolk from Silver Creek filled the benches, some to support them, most to watch the spectacle. Sterling Beaumont sat at the front table with 3 lawyers in expensive suits, looking like a man who'd never lost anything in his life. Jack's gut clenched when he saw him. Sterling was handsome in that polished way. Rich men were with perfect hair and perfect teeth and cold eyes that tracked Lori like a hawk watching prey. "Don't look at him," Jack whispered, guiding Lori to their table. "I can't help it. He's my brother." "He stopped being your brother when he tried to lock you away." Margaret was already arranging papers, her movements quick and efficient. Morrison sat beside her, sweating through his collar despite the cool morning air. Ben and Ruth took seats right behind them. Emma and Danny squeezed between them. "Papa," Emma whispered. "I'm scared." "Me too, honey, but we're going to be brave anyway." Judge Harrison entered through a side door. He was old, maybe 70, with liver spots on his hands and a face that gave nothing away. Everyone stood. "Be seated. Court is now in session." Harrison's voice was dry as old paper. "We're here to determine the matter of conservatorship regarding Miss Lorelei Beaumont. Mr. Caldwell, you represent the petitioner." One of Sterling's lawyers stood. He was tall, silver-haired, with a voice like honey over gravel. "Yes, Your Honor. Edmund Caldwell for Mr. Sterling Beaumont, who seeks only to protect his dear sister from herself and from those who would exploit her vulnerable state." Jack's hands clenched into fists under the table. "Miss Chen, you represent the respondent. I do your honor, and we will prove that Miss Beaumont is of sound mind, that her brother's petition is motivated by greed, and that she has every right to control her own life and fortune." Strong words. Let's see if you can back them up. Harrison looked at Caldwell. "Call your first witness." Sterling took the stand. He placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Then he settled into the chair like he owned it. "Mr. Beaumont," Caldwell began, "tell us about your sister." "Lorelei was always fragile even as a child. After our parents died, she became withdrawn, paranoid. She started making wild accusations about me, about the company, about people trying to harm her." "What kind of accusations?" "She claimed I was stealing from her, that I wanted her dead, that the doctors I hired to help her were actually trying to poison her." Sterling's voice broke perfectly. It nearly destroyed me to hear her say these things, to see her mind deteriorating. Jack watched Lori go pale. Her hands trembled in her lap. "Did you consult medical professionals?" "Several. They all agreed she needed rest, treatment, protection from stress and from her own poor judgment." "And did she cooperate with treatment?" "No. She ran away. Disappeared into a blizzard that could have killed her. If Mr. Mercer hadn't found her by chance, she'd be dead. And now she's attached herself to Mr. Mercer. What do you make of that?" Sterling looked directly at Jack. "I think my sister is confused, vulnerable, and I think Mr. Mercer saw an opportunity, a wealthy woman with no one to protect her. It's the oldest story in the world." Jack started to rise, but Margaret's hand shot out, holding him down. Caldwell continued for another 20 minutes, letting Sterling paint Lori as mentally ill and Jack as a predator. By the time he finished, half the courtroom was nodding along. Margaret stood for cross-examination. "Mr. Beaumont, you say your sister is paranoid. Let me ask you this. Have you been embezzling from the Beaumont Railroad Company?" "Objection. Caldwell shot to his feet. Relevance. I'm establishing motive, Your Honor. If Mr. Beaumont is stealing from his sister, her accusations aren't paranoid. They're accurate. Harrison considered. I'll allow it. But make it quick, Miss Chen. Mr. Beaumont answered the question. No, I have not embezzled anything. Then you won't mind if we examine the company's financial records? Sterling's jaw tightened. Those records are confidential. Not if they prove fraud, Your Honor. I have copies of financial statements showing systematic theft over 2 years. Nearly $500,000 funneled into fake accounts. The courtroom erupted. Harrison banged his gavel. Order Miss Chen approach the bench. Margaret walked forward with Morrison's documents. Sterling's lawyers clustered around, arguing in heated whispers. Jack couldn't hear what they were saying, but he saw Harrison's face darken. Finally, the judge waved them back. I'll review these documents. But for now, Mr. Beaumont, you're dismissed. Call your next witness, Mr. Caldwell. Sterling left the stand, his face red with barely controlled rage. As he passed their table, he leaned down and whispered something to Lori that Jack couldn't hear. But he saw Lori flinch, saw tears spring to her eyes. Jack's hand moved to his knife before he even thought about it. Ben grabbed his shoulder from behind hard. Not here. Not now. Caldwell called a doctor next, Dr. Edwin Pierce, who claimed he'd examined Lori years ago and found her mentally unstable. He used big words that meant nothing, talked about female hysteria and emotional fragility and the need for male guidance. Margaret tore him apart. Dr. Pierce, when exactly did you examine Miss Beaumont? 4 years ago, maybe 5. And you based your diagnosis on how many sessions? 1 was sufficient. 1 session, 5 years ago, and you feel qualified to testify about her current mental state. I know the signs of instability when I see them. Do you know the signs of being paid to lie? Because I have bank records showing Sterling Beaumont paid you $5,000 last month. The courtroom exploded again. Pierce stammered something, but Margaret spoke over him. No further questions. Caldwell called 3 more witnesses. Townspeople from Silver Creek who testified about impropriety about Jack and Lori, living in sin about the bad example they were setting. Martha Peterson took the stand and spoke with righteous fury about protecting children from immoral influences. Jack sat through it all, his face burning, his hands clenched so tight his nails drew blood from his palms. Finally, it was Margaret's turn. She called Lori first. Lori walked to the stand on shaking legs. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Then she sat down and looked at Margaret with terrified eyes. Miss Beaumont, tell us why you ran away. Lori's voice was barely a whisper. Because my brother was going to have me institutionalized. He told me it was for my own good, that I needed rest. But I heard him talking to the doctors. They were going to keep me sedated, keep me locked up until I signed over my shares of the company. Why would he do that? Because he's been stealing from it, bleeding it dry to pay gambling debts. I discovered the discrepancies in the accounts 6 months ago. When I confronted him, he told me I was imagining things, that I was sick. He started isolating me, controlling who I could see, what I could do. How did that make you feel? Terrified, helpless, like I was disappearing. Lori's voice grew stronger. I've spent my whole life being told what to do, how to act, who to be. My father loved me, but he saw me as something to be protected, not as a person with my own mind. After he died, Sterling just continued that, but worse, because he wanted to erase me completely. And then you ran. Yes, I ran into a blizzard without proper clothing or supplies. I could have died. But I chose possible death over certain imprisonment. Does that sound like someone who's mentally ill, or someone who's desperate to be free? Margaret let that question hang in the air. Miss Beaumont, tell us about your time at Jack Mercer's ranch. It was the first time in my life I felt like a real person. Jack didn't treat me like I was fragile or stupid. He gave me work to do. Hard work. I learned to cook and clean and mend. I bled. I got blisters. I burned food and ruined shirts and made mistakes. Lori looked at Jack, her eyes shining. And nobody told me I was incompetent. They just told me to try again. Do better. Keep going. Do you love Mr. Mercer? Objection. Caldwell stood. Irrelevant. It goes to her state of mind, Your Honor, to whether she's capable of making rational decisions about her own life. Harrison nodded. Answer the question. Lori looked at Jack for a long moment. Yes, I love him, and his children. They gave me something I've never had before. A family that chose me, not because of my money or my name, but because of who I am. Thank you. No further questions. Caldwell stood for cross-examination. He circled Lori like a wolf. Miss Beaumont, you claim to love Mr. Mercer. But isn't it true that he saved your life, that you felt indebted to him? At first, maybe. But that's not why I love him. Isn't it possible you're confusing gratitude with affection? No. Isn't it possible that a rough cowboy who showed you kindness looked appealing compared to your privileged but demanding life? My life wasn't demanding. It was a cage. A cage with servants and fine dresses and every comfort. Most women would be grateful. Most women aren't being slowly erased by their own family. Caldwell's voice hardened. Miss Beaumont, you ran away in a blizzard. You could have died. You risked your life rather than face your responsibilities. Does that sound like rational behavior? It sounds like the behavior of someone who had no other choice. There's always a choice. You could have hired lawyers, could have fought through proper channels. With what money, Sterling controlled everything. My accounts, my access. Even my mail was read before I received it. So you claim. But we have only your word for that. You have Henry Morrison's documents. You have proof of embezzlement. Alleged embezzlement. Nothing's been proven. Because men like my brother never face consequences. The system protects them. The system protects the vulnerable Miss Beaumont, including vulnerable women who make poor decisions. Margaret stood. Objection. Counsel is testifying. Sustained. Mr. Caldwell, stick to questions. But the damage was done. Jack could see it in the judge's face. Harrison was listening to Caldwell, nodding along. When Lori finally left the stand, she was shaking. Jack wanted to go to her, but Margaret called him next. He walked to the witness box on legs that felt like wood. The Bible was warm from Lori's hand when he placed his palm on it. Mr. Mercer, Margaret began, tell us how you found Miss Beaumont. I was closing up the barn when my daughter shouted that someone was out there. I ran, found a woman collapsed in the snow. She was nearly frozen. I carried her back to my cabin and worked all night to keep her alive. Did you know who she was? No. She told me her name was Lori Walker, said she'd gotten separated from a guide. When did you learn the truth? When her brother's men showed up looking for her. That's when she told me everything. And you chose to protect her. Why? Jack looked at Harrison, at Sterling, at the packed courtroom, then at Lori. Because it was right. Because she was terrified. And because nobody deserves to be locked away for wanting control of their own life. Some people say you're after her money. Those people are fools. Jack's voice was flat. I don't want her money. Never have. What I want is for her to be safe and free. That's all. Do you love her? Jack's hands tightened on the chair arms. The whole courtroom leaned forward. I don't know, he said honestly. Maybe I'm starting to. But I loved my wife Catherine for 10 years and lost her 3 years back. I ain't ready to love someone else. Might never be ready. But what I feel don't matter. What matters is, Lori deserves better than being treated like property. Thank you, Mr. Mercer. Caldwell stood. Jack braced himself. Mr. Mercer, you're a poor man, aren't you? I got enough. You're a widower raising 2 children alone on a failing ranch. My ranch ain't failing, but it's struggling. You could use money, couldn't you? Better equipment, more land, hired help. I could use a lot of things. Don't mean I'd marry for them. But Miss Beaumont is beautiful, wealthy, vulnerable. She must have seemed like the answer to all your problems. Jack's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. Miss Beaumont seemed like someone who needed help. That's all I saw. That's all I'll ever see. Come now, Mr. Mercer. You're telling me you had a young, beautiful woman living in your home for weeks and never once thought about what her money could buy. I thought about what her freedom would cost, and I decided it was worth fighting for. Even if it costs you everything, your ranch, your children's safety. My children are learning something more valuable than safety. They're learning courage. Caldwell smiled. Or they're learning that their father is a fool. Jack stood up. You calling me a fool to my face? Sit down, Mr. Mercer, Harrison barked. Not until he takes it back. Sit down, or I'll hold you in contempt. Jack sat slowly, his eyes never leaving Caldwell's face. No further questions, Caldwell said smoothly. Margaret called Ruth next. The schoolteacher walked to the stand with her back straight, her chin high. Miss Callahan, how long have you known the Mercer family? 8 years. I've taught both Emma and Daniel since they started school. And have you observed changes in them since Miss Beaumont arrived? Remarkable changes. Emma was carrying the weight of the household on her shoulders, being mother and housekeeper at 11 years old. Since Lori came, Emma's been able to be a child again. She laughs more, plays more. Her schoolwork has improved dramatically. And Daniel. Danny was so withdrawn. He barely spoke in class. Now he's participating, making friends, reading above his grade level. Lori reads to him every night, helps him with his letters. She's given those children something they've been missing, nurturing, love. Thank you, Miss Callahan. Caldwell declined to cross-examine. He knew better than to attack a beloved schoolteacher. Finally, Margaret called Henry Morrison. The accountant walked to the stand like a man heading to his own execution. His hands shook as he took the oath. Mr. Morrison, you worked for Jonathan Beaumont, correct? Yes, ma'am. For 15 years. I was his chief accountant. And after his death, I continued working for the company, under Sterling's management. Tell us what you discovered. Morrison pulled out his handkerchief and wiped his face. I noticed discrepancies. Money being transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. Invoices from suppliers that didn't exist. When I brought it to Sterling's attention, he told me to mind my own business. How much money are we talking about? Nearly $500,000 over 2 years. The courtroom erupted. Harrison banged his gavel. And you have documentation. Yes, I made copies before I left. Before Sterling threatened me. Threatened you how? He said if I talked, he'd make sure I never worked again, that my family would pay the price for my disloyalty. So you ran? Yes, to Denver. Changed my name. Tried to disappear. But Miss Chen found me. Convinced me that staying silent was worse than speaking up. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Your witness, Mr. Caldwell. Caldwell stood slowly. Mr. Morrison, you were fired from the Beaumont Company for incompetence, weren't you? No, I resigned. After you were accused of the very embezzlement you're now attributing to Sterling Beaumont. Morrison's face went white. That's a lie. Is it I have documents showing you were under investigation for theft when you fled to Denver? Those documents are fabricated. Sterling created them to discredit me. Or perhaps you created these embezzlement claims to cover your own theft. Perhaps you're testifying today to avoid prosecution. No, I'm testifying because it's the truth. The truth according to a disgraced accountant with an axe to grind. Margaret stood. Your Honor, Mr. Caldwell is making accusations without evidence. So is Miss Chen, Caldwell shot back. These documents could be falsified. They haven't been verified by independent auditors. Then let's get them verified, Margaret said. Let's open the Beaumont Company books to full audit. Sterling's face went purple. He leaned over and whispered urgently to Caldwell. Harrison held up his hand. That's enough. I'll take all testimony under advisement. We'll recess until tomorrow morning for my decision. Your Honor, Margaret said, the evidence clearly shows. I said we'll recess. Court is adjourned. Harrison stood and walked out. Sterling followed him, glancing back at Lori with a smile that made Jack's blood run cold. They gathered outside the courthouse. Morrison was shaking so badly Ben had to hold him up. He knew, Morrison whispered. Sterling knew I was going to testify. He had those fake documents ready. They were too prepared, Margaret agreed. Someone tipped them off. Jack looked around at the crowd, at the faces watching them. Any one of them could be Sterling's spy. What do we do now? Lori asked. We wait, and we pray Harrison does the right thing. But Jack could see it in Margaret's face. She didn't think he would. That night they took rooms at a boarding house. Jack couldn't afford it, but Margaret insisted, said it wasn't safe to make the ride back to the ranch in the dark with Sterling's men potentially waiting. Emma and Danny shared one room with Ruth. Margaret and Morrison took another. Ben and Jack shared a third. Lori was alone in a fourth at the end of the hall. Near midnight, Jack heard her crying through the wall. He knocked softly. Lori, you all right? The crying stopped. Footsteps. The door opened. Lori's face was streaked with tears. I can't do this, Jack. I can't sit here and wait for that judge to hand me over to Sterling. You ain't going to him. You don't know that. You saw Harrison's face. He's already decided. Then we'll appeal. Fight it in a higher court. That could take years. Sterling will have me locked up the whole time. Jack pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against him, sobbing. I won't let him take you. I swear it. You can't stop him. He's too powerful. Maybe, but I can try. Jack tilted her face up. Lori, listen to me. No matter what happens tomorrow, you're stronger than you think. You survived him once. You can do it again. I don't want to survive. I want to live. Then we'll figure out a way. Together. Lori kissed him, then desperate and hungry. Jack kissed her back, pouring everything he couldn't say into it. All his fear and hope and rage. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Stay with me tonight, Lori whispered. Please, I don't want to be alone. Jack knew he shouldn't. Knew what people would say, how it would look. But he couldn't leave her. Not tonight. All right. But we ain't doing nothing improper. I'm just staying until you fall asleep. I don't think I can sleep. Then I'll stay until you stop being scared. They lay on top of the covers, fully clothed. Lori curled against his chest. Jack held her and stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathe. Jack, she whispered, if tomorrow goes bad, if Harrison rules against me, promise me you won't do anything stupid. Can't promise that. Jack, I'm serious. If he tries to take you, I'll fight. I don't care about the law or the consequences. You're under my protection now. That means something to me. It'll get you killed. Then I'll die fighting. Better than living as a coward. Lori was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I love you, Jack Mercer. Even if you're too stubborn to love me back yet. Jack's arms tightened around her. Give me time, Lori. I'm trying. I know. They lay there until dawn started to gray the windows. Neither of them slept. But they had each other, and for that one night it was enough. Morning came too fast and not fast enough. Jack left Lori's room before anyone else woke, not wanting to give the gossips more ammunition. But when he walked past Ruth in the hallway, she just smiled and said nothing. They gathered for breakfast in the boarding house dining room. Nobody ate much. Emma pushed eggs around her plate. Danny sat pressed against Lori's side. Morrison looked like he might throw up. Whatever happens today, Margaret said, we fought well. Sometimes that's all you can do. That ain't good enough, Emma said fiercely. No, honey, it's not. But it's the truth. They walked to the courthouse at 8. The crowd was even bigger than yesterday. Word had spread about Morrison's testimony about the embezzlement evidence. People were hungry for drama for someone powerful to fall. Jack kept Lori close as they pushed through. Reporters shouted questions. Someone grabbed Lori's arm. Jack shoved them back hard enough that they stumbled. Touch her again and you'll lose that hand. Inside, Sterling was already at his table with his lawyers. He looked confident. Too confident. Jack's gut clenched. Something's wrong, he muttered to Margaret. I know, they're too calm. Judge Harrison entered. Everyone stood. When they sat again, Jack noticed the judge wouldn't meet Lori's eyes. I've reviewed all testimony and evidence presented, Harrison began. This is a difficult case involving serious allegations on both sides. Here it comes, Ben whispered behind Jack. However, I find that Miss Lorelei Beaumont has demonstrated sufficient cause for concern regarding her mental state and decision-making capabilities. Lori gasped. Jack grabbed her hand under the table. The evidence of embezzlement is troubling but unverified. Mr. Morrison's testimony is contradicted by questions about his own honesty. Without independent audit, I cannot rule against Mr. Sterling Beaumont, based solely on accusations. Your Honor, Margaret stood. We requested full access to company records. Mr. Beaumont refused. That's his right. Company records are private property. Not when they're evidence of fraud. Alleged fraud, Miss Chen. Not proven. Harrison looked at his notes. Furthermore, Miss Beaumont's behavior demonstrates poor judgment. Running away in dangerous weather, attaching herself to a stranger, living unmarried with a man and his children. These actions support Mr. Beaumont's concerns. Those actions demonstrate survival instinct, Margaret argued. She was escaping imprisonment. Or she was running from necessary medical care. I cannot determine which with certainty. Harrison's voice hardened. Therefore, I am granting temporary conservatorship to Sterling Beaumont, pending psychiatric evaluation. Miss Beaumont will be remanded to his custody immediately. The courtroom exploded. Lori went white as death. Emma started crying. Jack stood up. No. Mr. Mercer, sit down. No. She ain't going with him. Mr. Mercer, I will hold you in contempt. Hold me in whatever you want. She ain't going. Two bailiffs moved toward Jack. He put himself between them and Lori. Don't do this, Jack, Harrison said. You'll only make things worse. Can't get much worse. Sterling stood smiling that snake smile. Let him try something. I'd love to see a cowboy rot in jail for assault. Jack's hand moved toward his knife. Ben grabbed his arm. Not like this, Jack. You'll lose everything. I already am. Margaret pushed past Jack, facing Harrison directly. Your Honor, this is a miscarriage of justice. You know it. Everyone in this room knows it. Sterling Beaumont bribed you. Harrison's face went purple. That is slander, Miss Chen. Apologize immediately, or I'll have you disbarred. I'd rather be disbarred than complicit in kidnapping. Bailiffs remove Miss Chen from my courtroom. As the bailiffs moved toward Margaret, chaos erupted. Ben and the other ranchers stood, forming a wall around Lori. Ruth grabbed Emma and Danny, pulling them back. Morrison tried to run and was caught by one of Sterling's lawyers. Enough, Harrison shouted. Everyone sit down now, or I'll clear this entire courthouse. Slowly, reluctantly, people sat, but Jack stayed standing. Please, he said to Harrison. His voice was low, desperate. Please don't do this. You're sentencing her to a living death. I'm following the law. You're following Sterling's money. Bailiffs take Miss Beaumont into custody. The two men approached. Lori stood shaking. Jack moved to block them, but Margaret grabbed his shoulder. Don't. You'll go to jail and then you can't help her at all. I can't just let them take her. You have to, but this isn't over. We'll appeal. We'll fight. Lori turned to Jack. Tears streamed down her face. "Take care of Emma and Danny. Tell them I'm sorry." "Don't talk like that." "Jack." She touched his face. "Thank you. For everything. For showing me what family really means." Then the bailiffs took her arms and led her towards Sterling. Emma broke free from Ruth and ran to Lori, throwing her arms around the woman's waist. "No, you can't take her. She's ours." "Emma," Jack said, his voice breaking. "Let her go." "No." Danny ran over too, clinging to Lori's skirt. Both children were sobbing. Lori knelt down the bailiffs, allowing this small mercy. She pulled both children close. "Listen to me. You two are the bravest, strongest kids I've ever met. Don't you forget that. And don't you ever stop being brave." "Please don't go," Emma whispered. "I have to. But I'll fight to come back. I promise." She kissed each child's forehead, then stood. The bailiffs led her away. Sterling followed, his face triumphant. At the door, Lori turned back one last time. Her eyes found Jack's across the crowded room. "I love you," she mouthed. Then she was gone. Jack stood frozen. The courtroom was clearing around him. Emma and Danny clung to his legs, crying. Ruth and Ben were talking to Margaret. Morrison had disappeared. Jack felt something inside him break. Not like when Catherine died. This was different. This was watching someone he could have saved slip away because he wasn't strong enough, smart enough, powerful enough. "Papa," Emma said through her tears, "do something." "I can't, honey. I ain't got the power." "You're the strongest man I know. Strength don't matter here. Only money does." Ben appeared at his shoulder. "Jack, we need to go." "Where?" "Anywhere but here, before you do something that gets you killed." They walked out into bright morning sunlight. It felt wrong. The world should be dark, should be storming. Instead, it was beautiful and cruel. Jack loaded his family into the wagon. Emma and Danny huddled together in the back, their faces buried in Ruth's skirt. Margaret climbed up front beside Jack. "There's still options," she said as they started moving. "What options?" "We appeal to the Territorial Supreme Court. We can argue judicial misconduct. We can—" "How long will that take?" Margaret was quiet. 6 months, maybe more. 6 months of her locked in some sanitarium, being drugged, being broken. Jack's hands tightened on the reins. "That ain't an option." "Then what are you going to do?" Jack didn't answer. They rode in silence for an hour. Then Ben, riding alongside on his horse, spoke up. "I know that look, Jack. Whatever you're planning, don't." "I ain't planning nothing." "Liar. You're thinking about going after her, breaking her out." Jack didn't deny it. "That's the stupidest thing I ever heard." "Maybe. You'll get yourself killed. Or arrested. Either way, your kids lose their father." Jack looked back at Emma and Danny. They were watching him with desperate hope in their eyes. "What would you do, Ben, if it was someone you loved?" Ben was quiet for a long moment. "I'd do the stupid thing, but I'm asking you not to." They stopped for the night at a way station 20 miles outside Cheyenne. Jack got the children settled with Ruth, then walked out into the darkness. He needed to think, to figure out what came next. Margaret found him an hour later. "I know you're going back," she said. "You going to try to stop me?" "No, I'm going to help you." Jack turned. "What?" "I've been practicing law for 20 years. I've seen corruption before. But today was different. Today I watched a good man steal a woman's freedom because he got paid to. And I realized that sometimes the law ain't enough. Sometimes you need people willing to break it. You could lose everything. So could you. But we're doing it anyway." Margaret pulled out a piece of paper. "Sterling's taking Lori to a private sanitarium outside Denver, Greystone Manor. I have a friend who worked there. She says the place is more prison than hospital." "How long before he gets her there?" 2 days by coach. Maybe 3. Then we got 2 days to plan. Jack looked at her. You said you wanted to help. I did, but I was thinking more along the lines of legal assistance, not jailbreak. I need someone smart. Someone who can think 3 moves ahead. That's you. Margaret smiled slowly. My mother always said I'd end up in trouble. All right, Jack Mercer. Let's rob us a sanitarium. They worked through the night. Margaret drew maps, identified weaknesses, calculated timing. Jack planned routes, gathered supplies, thought about what could go wrong. By morning, they had something that might work, or might get them all killed. Jack gathered his people in the way station's common room. Ben, Ruth, Margaret, and the children. I'm going after Lori, Jack said simply. I know it's stupid and dangerous and probably won't work, but I got to try. Anyone who wants to walk away, I understand. No hard feelings. Nobody moved. Papa, Emma said. We're coming with you. No, you kids are staying with Ruth. We're not kids. We're your family. And we take care of family. Emma, you taught us that. Don't you dare leave us behind now. Jack looked at his daughter. She was 11 years old and fierce as a wildcat. He'd never been more proud. All right, but you do exactly what I say when I say it. Understood. Understood. They left within the hour. Jack pushed the horses hard, making up time. They reached the outskirts of Denver by nightfall of the second day. Greystone Manor sat on a hill outside town surrounded by iron fences. It looked exactly like what it was. A prison dressed up as a hospital. Jack studied it from the tree line, counting guards, noting entrances. Margaret was right. This wouldn't be easy. There's 6 men on patrol, Ben said. Maybe more inside. We'll have to go at night, when most of the staff is asleep. And then what? Just walk in and take her? More or less. That's your plan, more or less. Jack looked at his friend. You got a better one. Ben sighed. No, but I'm starting to think we're all crazy. They waited until midnight. Jack left Emma, Danny, and Ruth hidden in the trees with the horses. Then Ben, and Margaret crept toward the manor. The back entrance had a single guard. Jack snuck up behind him and knocked him out with the butt of his rifle. They dragged the man into the bushes. Inside the manor was dark and quiet. Oil lamps burned in sconces on the walls. Somewhere someone was screaming. The sound made Jack's skin crawl. Which room? He whispered to Margaret. 2nd floor, east wing. My friend said Sterling paid for the most secure room. They climbed the stairs. Every creak sounded like thunder. At the top, another guard sat outside a locked door. This one they couldn't sneak up on. Jack stepped into the light rifle raised. Don't move. The guard reached for his gun. Jack fired into the wall beside his head. Next one goes through you. The guard raised his hands. Ben tied him up and gagged him. Jack approached the locked door. Lori, you in there. Jack? Her voice was muffled, weak. Is that really you? Stand back from the door. He kicked it in. The lock splintered. Lori sat on a bed in a white gown, her wrists strapped to the frame. Her eyes were glassy. They'd already started drugging her. Jack's rage was a living thing. He cut the straps with his knife and pulled her up. Can you walk? I think so. They gave me something. My head feels strange. I got you. Just stay with me. Footsteps pounded up the stairs. Voices shouted. They were out of time. Ben appeared in the doorway. We got company. At least 10 men coming up. There's another staircase, Margaret said. Servants' stairs at the west end. They ran. Jack half-carried Lori, who stumbled with every step. Behind them, men shouted and boots thundered. They made it to the servants' stairs and started down. Halfway, someone grabbed Lori from behind. It was Sterling. Did you really think you could just take her? He snarled. Jack spun and drove his fist into Sterling's face. The man went down hard. Yeah, I did. They burst out the back door. Ruth had brought the horses closer. Emma and Danny were already mounted. Jack lifted Lori onto his horse and swung up behind her. Ride. They galloped into the darkness. Shots rang out behind them. A bullet whistled past Jack's ear. But they made it to the trees, made it to the road. And then they were flying through the night, leaving Greystone Manor and Sterling Beaumont behind. They didn't stop until dawn. Jack finally pulled his horse to a halt by a stream. Everyone dismounted, breathing hard. Lori slid down and promptly collapsed. Jack caught her. Hey, stay with me. Did we make it? Yeah, we made it. Where are we going? Jack looked at Margaret. That's a good question. Sterling will come after us, Margaret said. And now we're fugitives. Jack, you broke a court order. Assaulted guards. This is serious. I know. We need to leave the territory, head west where Sterling's influence doesn't reach, and give up everything I built, or stay and go to prison. Jack looked at his ranch to the east, everything he and Catherine had worked for, their dream. Then he looked at Lori, barely conscious in his arms, at Emma and Danny, watching him with absolute trust, at the people who'd risked everything to help him. We go west, he said. They rode for days, staying off main roads, avoiding towns. The drugs wore off slowly. By the third day, Lori could sit a horse on her own. By the fifth, she was almost herself again. They crossed into Utah territory a week later. The land was different here. Red rocks and vast sky, beautiful and harsh. Jack found a valley with water and grass. Good land. Unclaimed land. This could work, Ben said. Start over from scratch. You've done it before. Jack looked at his family. His real family. Not blood, but choice. Emma and Danny. Ben and Ruth and Margaret. And Lori watching him with those gray eyes. What do you think? He asked Lori. I think anywhere with you is home. 3 months later, they'd built a new cabin. Bigger than the old one, with room for everyone. Ben's ranch was a mile south. Ruth taught school in a newly formed settlement. Margaret practiced law, helping homesteaders fight off land grabbers. And one spring morning, Jack married Lori on the banks of the stream where they'd first stopped running. Emma and Danny stood beside them. Ruth officiated, having gotten herself ordained just for this. Ben and Margaret served as witnesses. Do you, Jackson Mercer, take this woman to be your wife? Jack looked at Lori. She wore a simple dress. Her hands were calloused now. Her face was tan from working in the sun. She'd never looked more beautiful. I do. And do you, Lorelei Beaumont, take this man to be your husband? I do. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Utah, and by common human decency, I pronounce you husband and wife. Jack, kiss your bride before we all die of old age waiting. Jack pulled Lori close and kissed her. She kissed him back, laughing against his mouth. Emma and Danny cheered. Ben whistled. Margaret wiped her eyes. When they finally broke apart, Lori whispered, "Thank you." For what? For saving me. For fighting for me. For choosing me. You saved yourself, Lori. I just gave you a place to land. That night, they gathered around a fire outside the new cabin. Emma played a fiddle Ben had given her. Danny fell asleep in Lori's lap. The stars wheeled overhead. You ever regret it? Ben asked Jack quietly. Leaving everything behind. Jack looked at his family, his wife, his children, his friends. He thought about the old ranch, about Catherine, about the life he'd built and lost and built again. Not once, he said. 6 months later, a letter arrived from Cheyenne. Margaret's appeals had finally worked their way through the courts. The Territorial Supreme Court had reviewed the case. They'd found evidence of judicial corruption. Harrison had been removed from the bench. Sterling was under investigation for embezzlement and attempted kidnapping. All charges against Jack were dropped. They were free to go home. But when Jack showed Lori the letter, she just smiled. We are home. She was right. Home wasn't a place. It was the people you chose to stand with when everything went to hell. Spring turned to summer. Summer turned to fall. Lori's belly grew round with their child. Emma and Danny built a crib with Ben's help. Ruth knitted blankets. And on a cold November morning, while snow fell soft outside, Lorelei Mercer gave birth to a daughter. They named her Catherine Hope Mercer. Jack held his newborn daughter and felt Catherine's presence like a warm hand on his shoulder. Not haunting, not accusing. Just there, proud, happy that he'd found a way to live again. "What do you think?" Lori asked from the bed. "Does she approve?" Jack looked at his wife, his partner, the woman who'd stumbled into his life during a blizzard and changed everything. "Yeah, I think she does." Years later, when Emma was grown and Danny was learning to run the ranch and little Catherine was toddling after her father, people would ask Jack about that time, about how he'd defied a judge and fought a railroad baron and started over from nothing, and Jack would always say the same thing. "I didn't do nothing special. I just protected what was mine. That's what decent people do. They stand up when they need to, they fight when they have to, and they never ever give up on the people they love." Lori would smile when he said that. She'd take his hand, scarred and strong, and she'd add her own ending. And sometimes the stranger in the storm isn't a stranger at all. Sometimes they're family you just haven't met yet. The land taught them well. Nothing worth having came easy. But what you built with your own hands, what you fought for with everything you had, that was yours forever. No storm could take it. No powerful man could steal it. Love wasn't something that happened to you. It was something you chose, every day. Through hardship and joy and everything in between. Jack chose Lori. Lori chose Jack. And together they chose a life worth living. That was enough. That was everything.